Once upon a time in a small town in America, there lived a woman named Grace. She was beautiful like the morning sun and strong like a lioness. Her husband, Mark, used to love her very much. He would sing to her in the kitchen, dance with her in the rain, and make her laugh until her belly hurt. But one day, everything changed. Mark started coming home late. He smelled like another woman's perfume. He stopped holding Grace's hand. He stopped laughing with her. Her heart began to break. Slowly, like a paper burning at the edge. Grace tried to talk to him. "Mark," she said with a soft voice, "why don't you love me like before?" He just grunted and said, "You're imagining things." Then he went to sleep, leaving her alone in the dark. Grace cried, but not for long. She looked in the mirror and said to herself, "I will not let my heart turn into dust. I will not let him win." Her voice was quiet, but inside she was roaring. Grace began to change. She stopped begging for love. She became mysterious. She wore red lipstick like a crown. She cooked delicious food but didn't offer him a plate. She danced in the living room with the music loud, but never invited him to dance. Mark started watching her like a lost boy in a forest. He didn't understand. She was slipping away like sand in his hands. Then one day, Grace found something. A secret phone in Mark's car. It had messages from a woman named Angel Eyes. "I miss you, baby. Last night was magic." Grace didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just smiled. A dangerous smile. That night, she lit candles. She made Mark's favorite meal. She wore a silk dress and her eyes sparkled like a secret moon. Mark sat at the table, confused but excited. "Grace," he said, "you look like a dream." But Grace just laughed softly and said, "Eat. We have so much to talk about." She had a plan. And from that night on, Mark's world began to twist. He didn't know she was playing a game that would turn the cheater into the chaste. Mark ate the food with a big smile. He thought everything was fine again. But Grace was just beginning her dance. As he chewed the last bite, she poured him some red wine and said sweetly, "Tell me, Mark, who is Angel Eyes?" The fork dropped. The smile faded. His eyes grew wide like a boy caught stealing cookies. I don't know what you mean," he stammered. Grace leaned in, her voice like honey with a blade hidden inside. "She calls you baby. Says you had a magical night. You left your secret phone in the car." "Oops." Mark's face turned pale like paper. "Grace, I can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can," she said, standing up slowly, like a queen. "But I'm not asking you to explain. I'm giving you a choice." Mark blinked. "A choice?" "Yes," she said, now walking behind him. "Either you leave with your lies and live with your angel eyes, or stay here and become mine. My servant. My helper. My shadow." Mark looked confused. "You're joking, right?" Grace whispered in his ear. "Do I look like I'm joking?" That night, she made him sleep on the couch. The next morning, she gave him a list. Wash the dishes, clean the bathroom, make my coffee, massage my feet. Mark did it. All of it. Not because she forced him, but because her silence was louder than thunder. Her beauty had become fire, and her power, unstoppable. He watched her walk around the house like a goddess, untouchable, unreachable. He didn't know if he loved her or feared her now, but deep inside, he felt something changing. And Grace? She was just getting started, because the real game was still hiding behind the curtain. Days passed like slow-moving shadows. Mark became quiet, like a boy lost in a house that used to be his. He obeyed every word Grace said. He swept the floors. He folded her clothes. He even painted her toenails while she scrolled on her phone like a queen in her throne. But Grace? Oh, she hadn't forgotten. Not about Angel Eyes. She still had the secret phone. She read every message, every little lie. One day, she texted Angel Eyes. Hey babe, let's meet again tonight. Same hotel? The reply came fast. Yes, baby. I've missed you so much. Grace smiled. A soft, dangerous smile. She now had her trap. That evening, she dressed up like midnight. Black heels, red lips, a coat that whispered secrets with every step. She walked to Mark, handed him the phone, and said, "Drive me." "Where?" he asked. "To the truth." He drove, silent. The air between them was thick with mystery. They pulled up at the hotel. Grace got out. Mark followed her like a lost puppy. She walked into the lobby like she owned the building. The woman from the messages was already there, waiting, smiling, wearing a short red dress. Mark froze. His mouth opened, but no words came. Grace walked right up to Angel Eyes. "Hi, I'm Grace." His wife Angel Eyes blinked. Then her face broke, like glass under pressure. Grace turned to Mark and said loud and clear, "You're dismissed." He looked like he'd been punched in the soul, but it wasn't over. Grace didn't leave. She stayed. She booked a room, alone. She wanted Mark to feel it, the silence of being nothing. That night, Mark sat in the car for hours, crying, alone. He called her 17 times. She didn't answer. He had finally tasted the loneliness he had served her for months. And in the darkness of that hotel room, Grace whispered to herself, "Let the fire begin." The night in the hotel was cold, but Grace didn't shiver. She lay in the big bed, her eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling like it held the secrets of the stars. Outside, Mark was still in the car, his heart beating like a scared drum. He had never seen this version of Grace. He had never known this kind of punishment. Silent, sharp, and soul deep. At 3 a.m., he finally gave up and drove home. The house felt empty, like it had forgotten how to breathe. He sat in the kitchen, staring at his hands, whispering her name like a prayer. "Grace. Grace. I'm sorry." But Grace was not listening. She was transforming. When she returned home the next morning, she looked like she'd walked through fire and came back made of diamonds. Mark ran to her, dropped to his knees. "Please. I'm sorry. I was stupid. I was lost. I didn't mean—" Grace walked past him like he was air. She left a note on the table. "You now work for me. You will cook. You will clean. You will give me your phone every morning. You will report your location every hour. If you disobey once, just once, I will release the screenshots to your mother, your job, your friends. I will become your storm." Mark sat on the floor, shaking. From that day on, he became her shadow. She didn't speak unless it was to give him instructions. She didn't let him touch her, not even her hand. She wore silk at breakfast, laughed on the phone with her friends, painted her nails like nothing ever happened. And then, one evening, Mark found something strange. A man's jacket on the couch. It didn't belong to him. His heart dropped. He looked around. "Grace?" he called, his voice like a whisper wrapped in fear. She came downstairs slowly, calm, powerful. "Oh," she said, picking up the jacket. "That's not yours? Silly me." Mark stood frozen. "Is there someone else?" She smiled. "I don't know. What do you think it feels like to be replaced?" And just like that, the fire burned deeper. Mark's heart thumped like thunder under his ribs. He stared at the jacket in Grace's hands. His hands were cold. His legs refused to move. "Grace," he whispered, "please tell me this is just a game." Grace walked slowly toward him, her silk robe flowing like liquid night. Her eyes sparkled, not with love, but with the quiet joy of control. "A game?" she said sweetly. "Mark, you started the game. I'm just playing better." He tried to grab her hand. She pulled it away. "I'm your husband," he said. "You were," she replied. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept checking the door, waiting for the man to come back. But no one did, or so he thought. The next morning, Grace was in the kitchen, humming to herself. Mark walked in, eyes red from tears and no sleep. "Where were you last night?" he asked. She looked up, sipping her coffee slowly. "I was exactly where I wanted to be." He tried to be strong. He wanted to shout. But he couldn't. He had no voice left. She had taken it, piece by piece. Later that day, he found a note in the laundry basket. "You wanted freedom. You wanted excitement. So did I." He tore it up, then cried over the pieces. Over the next few weeks, things got even stranger. Grace started going out every Friday night. She didn't say where. She didn't come back until sunrise. She would walk in smiling, her heels in her hand, her hair smelling like expensive perfume. Mark stayed home, folding her clothes, cleaning the windows, making her bed. Sometimes she would come back with gifts, not for him, for herself. And the worst part? She was glowing, powerful, beautiful, untouchable. Mark began to lose himself. He watched her like a servant watches a queen. He memorized her footsteps, her laughter, her silence. He began asking questions he never asked before. Who am I without her? Is this what she felt when I betrayed her? What happens if she never wants me back? Then one night, Grace came home early. Mark stood up, hoping, waiting, but she walked right past him until she paused at the stairs and said, "Tomorrow I want breakfast in bed. Egg soft, toast golden, coffee strong, no mistakes." And then she added something new. "If I'm happy, maybe I'll give you a new title." Mark blinked. "What title?" She smiled like thunder ready to strike. "Pet."
The word echoed in Mark's ears like a curse wrapped in sugar. Pet. He stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, watching Grace vanish into the bedroom like a storm returning to its sky. That night, he didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about all the names he used to call her: baby, honey, sweetheart. And now, he was waiting to earn a title that belonged to dogs. Morning came like a whisper. Mark rushed to the kitchen. He made the eggs soft, just the way she liked. Golden toast, coffee with cinnamon, 2 sugars. He placed the tray on her bed like an offering to a goddess. Grace opened her eyes slowly. She didn't smile. She just looked at the tray. She said. "You remembered." She took a bite, chewed slowly, sipped the coffee, then she looked at him. "You may sit." Mark sat at the edge of the bed, unsure if he was her husband, her pet, or her prisoner. "You want to know something?" she said, licking a bit of yolk from her lip. "The first time you lied to me, I felt something crack, like a mirror, but now? I feel free." Mark's voice was small. "Is there still a chance? For us?" Grace tilted her head. "A chance," she said softly, "only if you're willing to lose everything, and I mean everything." He nodded, desperate. Grace smiled, but it wasn't kindness. It was power. That day, she gave him a new set of rules. He had to ask permission before leaving the house. He had to kneel before speaking to her after 8 p.m. And he had to write her letters, one every day, telling her why he didn't deserve her, and why she should even let him sleep indoors. The days became a ritual. Mark woke up before the sun, polished Grace's shoes, steamed her dresses, wrote her a letter with trembling hands. "Dear Grace, queen of my breath, today I thank you for not abandoning me like I did to you. You are my light, my law, my punishment, and my only hope." She read them at breakfast, sipping her coffee slowly, like she was reading fairy tales written by a beggar. Sometimes, she smiled. Other times, she tore the letter in half without a word. Mark flinched every time she blinked. But something new had started in the house. Something strange. At night, Mark would hear footsteps in the hallway, but Grace was asleep. He checked the windows, the doors, nothing. Once, he swore he heard whispering in the walls. "She is not what she seems. This is only the beginning." He shook it off. He was tired, maybe even going mad, but Grace wasn't just punishing him anymore. She was studying him, testing him, pushing him deeper into her labyrinth. Then came the box. One evening, Grace handed him a small black box. "Open it." Inside was a collar, black leather, with a silver tag. It read, "Property of Grace." Mark's lips trembled. "Do I have to wear this?" She nodded once, and he did. That night, she made him sleep at the foot of her bed like a loyal dog. but she didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, her mind spinning like a wheel inside a wheel, because Grace wasn't just building a servant, she was building something darker, something not even Mark could imagine. But someone else was watching. The man with the jacket had returned. Only this time, he didn't knock, and he wasn't alone. The wind howled that night, like it knew secrets it couldn't hold in anymore. Mark was asleep on the cold floor, the collar tied around his neck, when the front door creaked open. No footsteps, just silence, sharp and slow like a knife dragged across glass. Grace sat at her vanity, brushing her hair, calm, expecting. She didn't turn around when the scent of cologne filled the room. "You're late," she said softly. Behind her stood a tall man in a gray coat, the same one who'd left his jacket on the couch, but this time, his eyes weren't gentle. They were watching her like she was both his creation and his curse. "You've gone too far," he said. Grace smiled at her reflection. "No, I've gone deep. There's a difference." Mark stirred in his sleep. The sound of Grace's voice always reached him, even through dreams. He opened his eyes, confused, half awake. Then he saw the man, and everything inside him collapsed. "Who is he?" Mark whispered, still kneeling. The man turned to him, eyes full of something older than rage. "She didn't tell you," he said, stepping forward. "I was the first. Before you. Before the rings. Before the lies." Grace stood now, calm, elegant, dangerous. "He was the first to break me," she said to Mark, "and the first to regret it." The man laughed, but it didn't sound happy. "Tell him, Grace. Tell him the whole story. The real reason you became a queen of shadows." Mark looked up, trembling. "Grace, what's happening?" She took a deep breath, walked to her nightstand, and pulled out an old box wrapped in red cloth. She set it down gently between them. "Inside this box," she said, "is the truth that made me, and the secret that could destroy us all." Mark reached for it. Her hand stopped him. "If you open it," she whispered, "there's no going back. No more mercy, no more pretending." The wind screamed through the open door, and the box began to hum. The humming grew louder. It wasn't from the box. It was coming through the box, like it had a heartbeat, like it was alive. Mark looked at Grace, his voice shaking. "What's in there?" Grace didn't blink. "My truth." The man in the gray coat stepped closer. "Don't let him open it, Grace. He doesn't deserve to know." Mark turned to him. "And who are you to decide that?" The man's eyes darkened. "I'm the ghost of her past. The reason she doesn't trust love. The reason she became this." Grace slowly knelt beside the box. Her hand hovered above it. "I never told you what happened before you, Mark," she said softly. "You thought I was born strong. I wasn't. I became strong after I broke into tiny pieces." She pulled back the red cloth. Mark gasped. Inside the box were photos, letters, a worn-out wedding ring, not his. She pulled out one photo. It showed her, younger, smiling in a white dress. Beside her was the man in the gray coat. Same eyes, same crooked smile. The background? A church. "You were married?" Mark whispered. Grace nodded. Her fingers trembled, just for a second. "Before you. Before everything." She handed Mark a letter, the paper yellowed with time. He read it. "You're nothing without me. You'll come crawling back, because no one else will want your broken heart. Love, your husband." Mark looked up, stunned. Grace's voice turned cold. "He hit me, controlled me, loved me like a jailer loves a prisoner. Then he left, took everything, even my name." The man in the coat didn't deny it. He just stared at her. "You used my evil to build your throne." Grace stood. "I used your fire to become the flame." Mark's heart shattered in silence. All this time, he thought he was the villain, but there was a darker story beneath his sins, one that had sharpened Grace long before he ever touched her heart. Then she said something that chilled them both. "I brought him here tonight, not for revenge, but for sacrifice." Mark blinked. Sacrifice. The room changed. The air grew heavy, like it had swallowed thunder. The box on the floor pulsed with light now, soft at first, then brighter, burning gold like fire trapped in a heartbeat. Mark stumbled back, shielding his eyes. The man in the gray coat reached for the doorknob, but it wouldn't turn. "Grace, don't do this," he growled. "You don't know what kind of power you're." "Yes," she said, voice low. "I do. I've known since the day you buried me in silence and walked away." She raised her hand, and the photos in the box lifted into the air, spinning slowly like ghosts circling a storm. The letters fluttered like wings, pages of pain rising from the past. Mark watched, frozen. The house began to hum, the walls, breathing, the chandelier shook above them, and Grace stood in the center of it all, eyes closed, hands glowing. "Every woman who has been broken," she whispered, "every heart betrayed, every name erased, stand with me now." The photos spun faster. The ring inside the box cracked open, split clean down the middle. The man in the gray coat began to sweat. His voice cracked. "Grace, this isn't justice. This is vengeance." She opened her eyes. They were no longer the eyes Mark knew. They glowed with ancient fire. "This is restoration." And then, light exploded from the box, flooding the room. Mark screamed. He saw visions. Women, hundreds of them, walking through the smoke of memory. Some crying, some laughing, some holding each other. All of them wearing the same look Grace now wore. Freedom. When the light faded, the man in the coat was gone. Not dead, not hurt, just gone. Erased, like he had never existed. Only the torn photo remained, the part with Grace still whole. She turned to Mark. He was shaking, curled on the floor, eyes wide with something beyond fear. She knelt beside him, gently touched his shoulder. "You've now seen who I am," she said. "Not a wife, not a victim, a force." Mark looked up slowly. "What happens to me now?" Grace stood tall. "Now," she said, "you choose. Be my servant, or learn to rise and walk beside the fire you once tried to control." And somewhere inside him, something began to wake, not out of fear, but respect, or maybe, rebirth. The silence in the room held its breath. Mark knelt before Grace, no longer out of fear, not even guilt, but awe. He had seen the truth, the weight of her scars, the fire she was forced to build from ashes others left behind. She wasn't just his wife anymore. She was a woman who walked through storms and came back with lightning in her veins. And now, he had a choice. He stood slowly, removing the collar from his neck, not in rebellion, but in reverence. He held it in both hands and offered it back to her. "I don't want to serve you because I fear you," he said softly. "I want to walk with you, because I finally see you." Grace didn't smile. Not yet. Her eyes studied him the way a queen watches a soldier laying down his sword. "Do you understand what that means?" she asked. He nodded. "It means I become a mirror. I hold your power, not your pain. I protect you, not control you. I love you, not own you." Tears welled in her eyes. Not from weakness, but from the sacred shock of finally being understood. She took the collar, placed it back in the box, and closed it. "Then let the curse end here." They walked to the door together. The house, once full of shadows, now breathed like it had been healed. The pictures on the wall were still, the air warm. Even the past, wild and untamed, now curled at Grace's feet like a tamed beast. She turned to him one last time. "I didn't make you my servant to destroy you," she said. "I did it so you could finally become the man I once believed in." Mark bowed his head, and for the first time in a long time, Grace reached for his hand, not to pull, not to punish, but to walk forward, together, not as servant and queen, but as fire and flame.